of today and tomorrow. I still have a dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. That all men are created equal.
Get up, stand up for your right. Get up, stand up for your right. Get up, stand up for your right. Get up, stand up, don't give up the fight.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Rod Solomons. Welcome to the second episode of Rod's Views. And this is our first episode where we're actually going to interview or have a discussion with one of the up-and-coming political parties that's contesting elections in 2024. But I'll talk about that a bit later on. We've got the Mzanzi with us today. But I first want to talk about a few issues, maybe 3 issues. As you know, South Africa, it's almost like a movie, as I say sometimes. Things change dramatically. The one thing that I want us to talk about is a question of our ex-speaker. She's now the ex-speaker. Wanting the state to pay a legal cost when she was Minister of Defence, and the state, meaning the people of South Africa, is taking her to court to go and account for the alleged corruption that occurred while she was a Minister of Defence. And you know Mrs. Mapisa-Nkakula, it's her right to defend herself, and she was quite public about it. She said she's going to court, she's going to face some music, and it's good and well. But then we all thought she's going to use her own funds to do that. And then suddenly it appeared that she wrote that she approached a previous department that she headed, the National Defence Force, asking them to pay for her legal costs. And we were aghast at that, because clearly, if my understanding is correct, I think the issue around the state paying for your legal costs has been changed, I think, under the new Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamola, is if you facing allegations of corruption or criminal matter, then the state is not going to pay your legal costs. So the worry is, if the state pays a legal cost, then this lady is going to follow the Stalingrad strategy of Jacob Zuma. She's going to employ the most expensive lawyers. It's going to be appeal upon appeal, delay upon delay, because it's not their own money. It's going to be taxpayers' money. It's going to be your money and my money. Because, you know, although it says it's a state versus Mapisa-Nkakula, it's actually, as I have in America, it must be the people versus Mapisa-Nkakula. So how ironic would it be if the state pays for her legal costs? Then it means the people is paying for her to defend herself against the people. So we need to speak up. We need to push back, and we need to let government know that it is not acceptable. And I hope that our political parties, especially those who are contesting elections, is going to have a strong view around that. So She must pay for herself if she wants to defend herself against the corruption allegations. The second issue that I want to talk about is again another victory for the MK party against the ANC. Another victory for Dali Mpofu, or as I call him, Clever Dali, senior counsel. And on top of it, the MK party won the matter on costs, with costs. So that's a huge nosebleed for the ANC. So it's another massive PR victory. But there are a number of questions that comes up. The one is the Secretary General of the ANC really so weak and so incompetent? Because that happened under his watch. He was the one that ensured there was a delay in going to the appealing the IAC decision to allow the MK party to use that logo, etc. And at the nth hour, now they want to go on the basis of urgency, etc. So I read the judgment today. It's an interesting judgment. And trademark law is a very technical thing. It is not wishy-washy. You need to know your story. And that's why it's a specialized area of the law. And I looked at that. I read it. I'm not a specialist in trademark matters, but I think the ANC is going to have a difficult case if they want to appeal that matter. But let them appeal it. It's because it is going to be another nosebleed for them. Then the other thing that I find strange is that the ANC spokesperson is saying that they are going to appeal this matter as a matter of principle. The last time I understood that you win a case not on principle, but on how strong your arguments are and how strong whether you interpret the law properly. So let's see how they go about that. But you know what? I think there might be another issue at play here. There might be another issue at play here. And the issue at play is this not a purposeful own goals that are being scored so that the Mashatile clique and so on can coalesce together? And at some stage that if the ANC, and there's a strong speculation that the ANC is going to get below 50%, and some people say even below 40%, I think it's going to be in the low 40s. But there is then the sense that if it happens, if the ANC fares so badly in this election that they will recall Ramaphosa. We all know Ramaphosa is a reluctant president. They will recall Ramaphosa. And if MK party gets upwards between 8 and 15%, the EFF gets close to that as well, that then there's a deal that's being made. Remember the tea that Julius Malema had with Jacob Zuma in Nkandla many, many months ago? And the nice relations Julius Malema has with Mashatile, is that there then becomes a deal between the ANC, MK, and the EFF. And then the issue of trade-offs happens. So watch that space with interest. Then the third thing that I want us to think about and consider is all of these, the governing parties, meaning national government where the ANC is in charge of, and some of the provincial governments where the ANC is in charge of. It's in charge of 8 provinces. And the Western Cape government that the DA is in charge of, where all of them are now suddenly launching significant projects that they took years to implement and to get off the ground. A few months or a few days before the elections, suddenly these projects are being launched at great fanfare. One don't know how long these projects are going to last. There are lots of PR exercises, and there's money that is being spent on lots of advertising. But there's a bigger question around that. And the bigger question, and I'm gonna ask our guests around that as well. The bigger question is, should we not consider to bring in a law in South Africa, probably after the elections, to outlaw that kind of thing, to outlaw advertising by government departments, etc., and them launching such projects before an election? I think that is just an abuse of funds by these political parties. So those are the 3 things that I wanted to share today with you guys. And our guest is in the studio. He's a young man, Axolile Notywala. Did I pronounce it correct?
Axolile. There's a click there.
Axolile. Oh, I like that. Axolile. Axolile, welcome to Rod's Views.
Thank you.
He's a young man, people. You're about 34, if I'm not mistaken.
34, yes.
34 years old. He's an activist. I think I know Axolile. We've been, sorry, I just want to switch my phone on silent. You've been involved with Right2Know?
Yeah.
And what section? What's
Social Justice Coalition.
Social Justice Coalition?
Yeah.
You were the national coordinator of Right2Know?
Mm-hmm.
And the Secretary General of the Social Justice Coalition?
SJC. Yeah.
So he's been on the other side of the fence. He's been agitating for government to do things for the communities and society. You've stepped up to the plate. Mm-hmm. It's good to see a young person being the premier candidate for the Western Cape. You're part of the national leadership of
Rise Mzanzi.
Mzanzi. So is there anything else that that you would like to tell us and the viewers and the listeners about Axolile? Yeah.
About me,
Yeah, yeah.
myself. I'm a resident of the Western Cape.
Okay.
I've been here since I was 5.
Okay.
I did my schooling, did my high school, and university. I actually went to study mechanical engineering.
Is it?
Post high school, and then I got involved in activism.
Okay.
But then I'm also on the 27th, 2 days before the election. I'm graduating
in
at
94?
UNISA.
Oh, this
I'm
year?
graduating at UNISA this year, yeah.
Okay.
So once I got involved into activism, which is politics, not with the capital letter P,
Yeah.
but it's politics. I then started to study politics at UNISA. So
Okay.
I've just finished that. I'm graduating on the 27th.
Of May?
Of May, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's me. I've been involved in a number of projects, community development projects. Started a soccer team for young men, particularly, to get them to talk and engage about issues of young men, mental health and gender-based violence
Okay.
in the main. And yeah, that team is still going. I don't have as much time for the team
Okay.
now because election campaigning is full on.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are just some of the things
Okay.
about me.
What's the team called?
The team is called Role Models
Okay.
FC.
Okay.
And the idea is that, I mean, for a long time now, in our communities, particularly township communities, there aren't any positive role models anymore. And we had conversations to say, as young men and as young boys, we must be, we must model that, and we must be those positive role models. That means we need to consider how our lives should be. What is it that we do now? What is it that we do in the future? For us to be those positive role models. And part of being a positive role models is how young men and boys interact and engage with young girls, with women, with mothers, and with grandmothers. How do we get back that respect and dignity, both from young men, but also to the people that they interact with in society?
Okay, no, that's a very, very good project. Well, all the best with that, and don't give it up. I think it's a long slog.
Yeah.
The issue about role modeling and influencing young people. You know, the one thing is people are generally peeved off with politics with a P, which you are now entering.
Yeah.
And that's why the civil society formations and groupings were so influential and did things that the political parties couldn't do.
Yeah.
And people veered a lot towards civil society groupings. So what made you then decide to get into politics with a P? And what difference do you think would it make? What did your friends say when you said, "Listen, I'm going to politics with a P"?
Yeah.
With a capital P.
Yeah, I mean, there was reluctance from them. It also took me some time in terms of considering and getting involved with Rise Mzanzi, which was in the beginning of late 2022. But I think where things started to shift for me and a number of others, we started to have conversations because we've been campaigning and doing work, particularly on issues of land and housing. On issues
Who's now we when you talk about we?
We is the Social Justice Coalition, together with organizations such as Ndifuna Ukwazi, Equal Education, that I've worked with and closely to in the Western Cape.
Okay.
And we've done a lot of work over the years. There was then also the introduction through Ndifuna Ukwazi of Reclaim the City, also dealing with issues of inner city and land and housing. A number of years ago, we started to just have reflections because we felt like we were hitting a brick wall. Whether we engage with the city of Cape Town, whether we engage with the provincial government, whether we engage with the national government, particularly around issues of safety, because policing is a national function. And we felt like there was a brick wall. Every advocacy work that we had to do, almost all ended up in court, because when we hit a brick wall, then we have to go to court. And court is expensive and it's time consuming. It takes time. And we realize that there's something that is wrong with the inside of this brick that we keep hitting. Some of the members of Reclaim the City and Ndifuna Ukwazi were invited in Barcelona in Spain in a gathering. I think it was called Fearless Cities. So where different organizations, civil society organizations, came together to talk about issues in different countries around politics as well. There they also met a candidate in Barcelona who was running for council, for local government. Her name was Ada Colau, who was a woman that had been fighting in an organization called Barcelona en Comú, fighting foreclosures, fighting issues, and this was just after the 2008 crash. And so people's homes were being dispossessed and people being made homeless. So she was an activist around issues of housing. Similar conversations they had there, she decided to run for council. And she ran on a civil society ticket, brought together different civil society organizations and won and became the first mayor as a woman in Barcelona. And it was that particular lesson, but also the types of politics that were spoken about with Fearless Cities and Barcelona en Comú and Ada Colau that she started to pilot and introduce, where we started to hear about the politics of care, where we started to hear about this idea of municipalism. How do you bring politics back to the people at a very local level? So we then started to reflect on that because we were also working on issues of local governance, and we started to reflect on that. And soon, while we were having those reflections and thinking about 2021 in our context, 2021 local government elections, then COVID-19 hit, and then lockdown hit. And that for us presented an opportunity, which was a challenging opportunity, where we knew that poor and working class communities were going to be the ones to suffer the most when there was lockdown. And we know people lost jobs. We know many people couldn't protect themselves from the virus because they were homeless, because they didn't have water to wash their hands and to keep clean, because they live in overcrowded spaces. And so it was those people that we had to think about. We then started forming the Cape Town Together, where we started to form community action networks in different parts of the city.
The cans.
The cans, yeah. So I was part of the Khayelitsha can.
Okay.
And that's when we started to realize that our politicians just don't care. Because at that moment where we felt they were needed the most, they were essentially on political leave. They were nowhere to be seen. Instead, they sent the army. They sent the police.
It was civil society that stepped up in ordinary South Africans.
Exactly.
So at that stage, we didn't even need government.
Exactly. They disappeared. It was civil society that took care of people who were homeless, that took care of the elderly, water, sanitizers, and all those, and food, and giving people food.
Okay.
That was a reflection for us to say, something is wrong with our politics. Something is wrong with people that we have put in power. We need to do something and change that.
Okay.
And that's when the conversations around starting to be involved in politics began.
Good grounding. So, it makes me follow up on, I looked at your manifesto. Looks nice and colorful, the way they put it, glossy, and I saw some of the people on the pictures. I know some of them, academics, activists, etc.
Yeah.
Probably say all the nice things and so on. But I'm going to drill down into some key things that I want to ask you.
Sure.
But what do you think are the three key offerings that Rise Mzanzi is bringing to South Africa? Mindful of that background, that base that you laid now in terms of what you experience in Barcelona and all of your activities here, and especially COVID and so on. So what are the 3 key offerings you think that Rise Mzanzi is providing that other political parties are not providing? Because if you look at the manifesto, they all talk about similar stuff.
Yeah.
But give us a sense of that.
So the first, which you would also see as number 1 in our manifesto, is leadership, governance, and implementation.
Okay.
Many of the failures in our country in terms of service delivery, both in the 30 years of ANC's governance in the country and in the 15 years of the DA's governance in the province, are linked to leadership, to governance issues, and to implementation. We have one of the most revered constitutions in the world, one of the best constitutions in the world. And that constitution has allowed, at least post-1994, for some progressive legislation as well. Not all is well and done, and it's not perfect, but there's some legislation that, if you look at it, if things had been done and pushed in 1994, within the 30 years, we could be somewhere different than where we are. And hence, our main call in this election is that we need new leaders. We need new leaders with fresh ideas, with their experience, but also with a plan in terms of what to do, what is needed for the next 30 years, because we do realize that for us, this is a generational mission. It's not just about 2024. Okay. We're contesting to try and stop, we say we stop the bleeding, which means we stop the ANC and we stop the DA in this province. So that's the one. The second, we believe, is I'll couch these into one that need fixing for our country, particularly the 2 SOEs, Eskom and Transnet. If we are to create a working economy, an economy that is inclusive, but also an economy that creates jobs, we won't be able to do that if we don't fix Eskom, if we don't fix Transnet. These are the 2 SOEs that have been distracted, particularly through ANC-linked corruption. We know of the Guptas in relation to many other SOEs as well, but these 2 particular SOEs remain very crucial for our economy so that we can be able to create jobs. So that's the second. The third is that we need to fix our municipalities. The chaos that is happening in Johannesburg didn't start with the coalitions, with the coalition government. That's something that's recent. It is chaos that has been ongoing and that has been coming. It has just been exposed through these coalitions, coalitions government that are happening now. We know of chaos in many other municipalities across the country. And even in the city of Cape Town, which is a municipality that people say is the best run municipality. But then there's a contradiction there. You can't be the best run municipality and be the most dangerous municipalities at the same time. There's something wrong there. There's something wrong there. And so there's something that's broken with our municipality, but also in relation to how all these municipalities relate to provincial government and national government. That idea of cooperative governance is something that's missing, that's completely missing within the politics of the country.
Okay, thanks. I think those are 3 powerful things that you mentioned there. Leadership, governance, and implementation. I've got a sense that there's a lot of leadership within Rise Mzanzi. and you also got lots of that, I think. The issue is, and your leader, he was the editor of Business Day. And you said leadership, governance, and implementation. Your expertise and practical expertise in terms of governance and implementation. Give people a sense around that.
Sure.
Because you say the problem is Constitution is great and all of that stuff, but the things that should have been implemented, it's not being implemented.
Yeah.
So how do you guys fit in there? Because lots of people are saying, you people don't have experience of being in government or implementing things and so on. Talk briefly about that.
So if you look at the national leadership of Rise Mzanzi, we've got tons of experience, of course, outside of government. Implementing projects, starting organizations, sustaining organizations, leading organizations. Many of us have done that. Different sectors, civil society, business, academia. And that's important experience. We have one of the, I would say the only politician, full-on politician within Rise Mzansi, Makashule Ghana, is someone that has served, one of few politicians in the country that have served at all three levels. He was served at council as a councillor, he served in the provincial legislature in Gauteng, he served in the National Assembly. And so there's experience there. But also, I think...
Is he the one that was at the DA?
He's the one that was in the DA.
Yeah.
But also...
But he was a politician. He wasn't a MACO member or a cabinet minister or something like that.
No. Okay. I mean, that's governance experience.
Okay.
Being in those three different types of legislatures. But also, I think my experience and experience of many others, I can say that some of us are way more experienced than people that are in governance at this moment. Because for us to be able to engage with many of them over the years, we had to understand governance. Because we were saying that, understanding and analyzing that things are going wrong, and we had to propose how things should go right. And that meant we had to study and understand government and understand governance and understand policies and understand legislation. Being an activist doesn't mean that you just protest, you just wake up and protest and throw stones. It means that you get to understand the Constitution, you get to understand legislation, you get to understand policy. And that's the experience that many of us have. And we've seen the failures, and we've outlined the failures, and we've made proposals. And collectively, if you look at the national leadership of Rise Mzansi, together with many of our candidates, and some of them have been in government. Mandela Isaacs, who's our head of policy, worked in the Department of Home Affairs, so he has government experience. If you combine the National Leadership Collective, if you combine the candidates that we've called on, because these are people that were not part of Rise Mzansi, some of them, and we called on people that believe that they have the skills and capability to be part of our list. We have, I would say, one of the most vibrant, experienced, and diverse leadership collective that you can combine for our politics in South Africa.
Okay, so you guys are contesting all 9 provinces, eh?
We are contesting all 9 provinces, yes.
Then you mentioned a big thing around fixing municipalities, which is a massive issue, and it affects ordinary South Africans. Yeah. Like even here in the Western Cape, I mean in Cape Town, as I came here to the studio, I put in petrol and I saw people were
I went past that as well. Yeah,
at
I saw
tank,
that.
And I went and I asked the lady, why is this? And then she said, no, in my thought, my head space was, oh my goodness, here they're giving me an opportunity to raise something here tonight. Again, a failure of the city and all of that stuff, etc. But then she said it was vandalism. A guy vandalized people vandalized the pipe, etc. And then she explained what they're doing and so on, etc. And I said, shoo, I hope this is not the start of what's happening in Joburg. So my question is, you said fixing municipalities.
Yeah.
How would you guys do it? You don't need to give me just give me just a highlight, because you've interacted with municipalities.
Yeah.
You've indicated, and you guys have interacted with the city of Cape Town. So what are some of the things that needs to be done to fix our municipalities that Rise Mzanzi would do?
Yeah. There's a lot of basic things.
Just give me a few.
That need to be done. One, we have a challenge of a city that has a potential, but a city that remains an apartheid city. Without solving that, many of the challenges that we have with crime, with violence, with drug abuse are going to remain, with unemployment are going to remain, with poverty, they're going to remain. Because you can't expect people to be prosperous in a city where they spend 40 to 50% of their salary on transport. There are no trains in Cape Town. And so issues of land and housing, that's the one thing to resolve. And this, again, at the outset, doesn't even need expropriation, because we're under fire now from the DA because we spoke about expropriation, and they are smearing us there's a smear campaign against us. But this issue doesn't even need expropriation, because there are pieces of public land, local government, provincial government, national government.
We'll talk about the land question a bit later.
That should be used, and that's a municipal function. Housing here, because it's a metro, and so they have those powers. So that's the one thing. The second thing that needs to be fixed is in relation to the issue of safety.
Okay.
Many people will say, rightly so, partly, that it's a national function, that it's a policing issue. But we cannot law enforce poverty. We cannot law enforce inequality. We cannot law enforce unemployment. Cannot arrest everyone that's poor, that's hungry.
And you can't have soldiers on every street
You cannot.
of Cape Town.
You cannot. And that means you need to make sure that young people have opportunities. And the issues that I was talking about in relation to my soccer team is that for the last 5 years, and we have engaged with the ward councillor to no avail, for the last 5 years, we've struggled to get a piece of land. The piece of land exists. We've just said, please help us develop this so that young people can have a space. In many other parts of the city, these spaces don't exist. The issue of drug abuse, the issue of gun violence, young people are easily attracted to that because there's nothing for them. There's nothing that they can do. The third is planning. This municipality doesn't plan. This municipality understands the future. They keep talking about inward migration, but they don't plan for that. This is the first municipality to have a water crisis. They can talk now, and we can talk about Johannesburg. But this was the first municipality to have, and they were told about it years ago.
Yeah.
They knew about it years ago, but they didn't plan for it.
Now they laugh at Joburg.
Exactly. And planning meant that you needed to maintain and refurbish infrastructure so that you don't have as much leaks that you have. And the city never did that. So those are things, and this is why partly I would say maybe one or two reasons which I've spoken about. Either vandalism, as you've said, which is issues that's linked to crime, or infrastructure that's not working.
Yes.
The reason why now people have to queue for water.
Yeah. Okay, what's your people's position? Let's talk about some global stuff. The position on Palestine, Israel, and then what's your position on Russia, Ukraine?
Sure. So,
because remember, the thing is now when you talk Palestine, Israel, then they say, okay, now what's your view on But give me or give people a sense of what's your people's position on this.
Yeah, I think both important global dynamics. Israel, Palestine, Russia, Ukraine. We have set out in our manifesto that our foreign policy and our global outlook, our international relations must be founded on the principles and basis of human rights, first and foremost. Our engagements with whoever must be founded on the basis of human rights and defending and protecting human rights. Because of global wars across the country, it will always become difficult to be tied to one. And we need to look at what is also happening in Sudan. We need to also look at what is happening in the Congo. Because these are global issues that require our attention as well. We have said that the one thing that is needed in relation to Israel and Palestine, first and foremost, we've called for an immediate ceasefire. We've called for allowance of humanitarian support, particularly for the many that suffer in Palestine as a result of the war. We continue to say that there needs to be a ceasefire so that there can be, again, because this conversation it didn't begin from the 7th of October. This is something that has been happening. A conversation about the two-state solution, where we're saying Palestinians deserve freedom. They deserve to be free. Similar outlook with Russia and Ukraine. Those nations need to live as their own individual nations. And again, human rights must be respected. We understand that, unfortunately, in the world in which we live, there are others who are way more powerful than others. And hence, the role of the United Nations becomes way more important. And we've called on the United Nations to play its role in both these wars, but in also other wars and other human rights abuses that we hear and that we see across the world. And unfortunately, we continue to be failed by the United Nations.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So I think you partly on, but let me pose the follow-up. Is international relations, and so we've got friends. South Africa has got friends. All over. So there's an issue that comes up. Should it be dictated by who our friends are? Or who do we have the best trade deals? Or should human rights considerations framework, should that triumph at all times?
Firstly, we have to think about South Africans.
Yeah.
We have to think about what is best for South Africa and South Africans and our sovereignty as well as a country. But we must not compromise on human rights. We should never compromise on human rights. Because if we do it once, what happens in another instance? Because now we have a situation or situations where we find that there's what's the word? There isn't consistency in terms of how our current government deals and responds to these issues, particularly the issues that you've spoken about in relation to Israel and Palestine and Ukraine and Russia.
So can I just follow up, because you said we must look at what's in the best interest of South Africa. So it might be in the best interest of South Africa to close our eyes to the human rights transgressions that's happening in a particular country. Because that country, for example, there are few of the companies that's investing in South Africa, and they create thousands of jobs. And if South Africa is insisting that the human rights transgressions that country is busy with needs to be dealt with, they say, South Africa, if you guys do that, we close our factories. Your people will be unemployed. That's now a real thing on the table. What's Mzanzi's approach?
So, I mean...
Because it's in the interest of South Africans for them to have the jobs. But there's this human rights...
I mean, the reality is that we live in a globalized world. And while that is important for us to look at and make sure that we take care of the interests of South Africans, it is also the interest of South Africans that human rights across the world are respected. Because we are not a country on our own that lives in its own world. We are a country that is in Africa, in a continent that's part of the world. And therefore, what happens in other parts of the world is something that is of the interest to South Africans, because one way or the other, we do engage, we do trade, we do relate with one or more of the countries where many of these things are happening.
Okay, let's come back to South Africa, and it follows up on it. Unemployment. It's a time bomb. What will you guys do to address this time bomb in South Africa?
So it's again very much linked to the destruction that has happened over the last 30 years. It's linked particularly, I think, to four things that I have spoken about. One, we can't be able to create jobs if we don't have electricity, if we can't move goods in and out of our country. And that means Eskom and Transnet. Needs to be fixed. You fix those, you also invite investor confidence as well. Companies are able to provide more jobs. The second is that you can't prosper and you can't have an economy that creates jobs if you are also, particularly in the context of the Western Cape, the most dangerous province, with gang violence, with extortion, with mafias that run parts of this province and this city. It again chases away investor confidence. No one wants to start a business. Even small businesses who also create employment in our communities, they can't now because they are being extorted. They can't now when there's gang violence happening. So those things you need to fix. Once we are able to deal with these, we need to make sure that young people have the skills required to be employable, to get jobs. And we've spoken about this idea of a job seekers grant. Because we have so much poverty, because we don't have an affordable, accessible public transport system, it becomes way more difficult for people who are unemployed to find jobs. And we are saying...
So the job seeker grant is in essence to people looking for jobs, they get an allowance, a grant?
For a period of about 3 months, in our thinking.
Okay.
To say, while looking for job, you need to eat. People need the internet to look for jobs. They need to do CVs. But also, most importantly, they need transport. And we know how expensive that is in many parts of the country.
Did you guys cost how much that grant would what's the quantum of that grant?
We haven't done the costing yet, but it's something that we want explored.
What's the amount that you guys got in mind to give people?
So we don't have that figure as yet.
Okay.
But what we do understand and what we do talk about is that part of what is needed in relation, and we know now we, of course, dealing with an austerity budget, it is all about choices. It is all about decisions. And it goes back to that issue of leadership. You can choose to provide a job seekers grant, or you can choose to use that money for something that will not benefit South Africans, or in the current reality, to steal that money. And it is about those choices. But then the last thing I think that is important is that we also need to create new industries. Tourism in Cape Town benefits a certain few. It's not an inclusive economy. We need to make that inclusive. That means people that come and fly into the airport and go on one side, we need to make sure that they are able to go on the other side. And that means we make sure that those communities are safe, so that tourists can go there, so that tourists can spend there, so that the township economy can also be a growing economy.
Okay. Can I wanted to latch onto the crime thing, but let me ask you one particular question around what practically, because you said the crime issue needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
What practically does Rise Mzanzi propose to be done to deal with crime?
So I was just looking at this book just right now.
Is that the guns?
Yeah, give us more guns. And this is exactly where our thinking is, because this is where most of the problem.
So you think people must get more guns?
No. No. We need to take away the guns.
Okay.
This is where most of our problem arises. This book, I think it outlines and highlights the thousands of guns that were sold to criminals, particularly in this province, that have killed over thousands of people.
And many of those guns belong to the state.
And these were guns that were in the police. So the first thing is deal with the corruption within the police. That means you need to clean SAPs, you need to clean the police. And what we propose is for a body, an independent body, that will do that work, that will look at all the senior police officers, that will look at all their links, their relations, how much money they get, look at their lifestyles, and investigate whether those people only have salaries that they get from the state. And if there are any links of corruption, because we know a lot of this corruption doesn't start from the police station. It starts there and it trickles down.
Okay.
we should not be having Bheki Cele as our Minister of Police. This is someone that was dismissed as a National Police Commissioner because he was alleged to have been involved in fraud and corruption. And now he's being brought back to be a police minister. So if we have...
So that around the building?
That was around the building. But also, we've possibly only had one National Police Commissioner to finish their term. And many of them have left.
Wasn't that Fivers? George Fivers, the first?
I think so, yeah. The following after that, they've never. Because alleged corruption or mismanagement.
So can I follow up on that? So you say clean up the police.
Yeah.
So what if the cleanup is such, then more than half of them go, and you know how long it takes for a police person to reach a particular level. So we'll have to then employ tens of thousands of other police people.
No,
if
the
the cleanup is so cleanup is so effective.
The cleanup particularly needs to happen at some of these levels, not necessarily at the police. There's a lot that needs to be cleaned up at the police station, but at the senior level, there are many good, dedicated and working police officers who
that's fine.
would not be promoted because of how good they are, because of those links. And once we are able to do that, and the second thing, again, which is as a result of ANC distraction and disruption, is our crime intelligence through Richard Mdluli, through politics and meddling in crime intelligence. In Cape Town and the Western Cape and in many other parts of the city, this issue of guns, we're dealing with organized crime. That means we need crime intelligence. We need intelligence-led policing to be able to find where these guns are, where they come from, where the drugs are, and where they come from, and to close those taps. And that's what we need to fix.
Okay, so you spoke about corruption in the police and all of that stuff, etc. So, and you know, South Africa has been afflicted with corruption for over a long period. And a lot of that stuff that you spoke about, Transnet, Eskom, all of that stuff linked to corruption. What is Mzanzi's approach, or what would should be the approach?
On corruption?
If there is a serious allegation against a member of your party, or even against you, what should happen, or what is Mzanzi's position on that?
So, corruption is not a victimless crime. And whatever you do, you steal, it's going to affect someone somewhere. And anyone who is alleged to be corrupt must be put aside until that investigation is finished. And we draw, even when people talk about ideas of coalitions around who we might coalesce with, we draw a red line. If there will be conditions where we say people must not be prosecuted now or in future, we draw a red line on that. We must be tough on corruption. Even
if it's against someone in your party?
Anyone. We must be tough on corruption. Whether if it's me, if it's Songezo, if it's anyone, we must deal with it. Because the moment we let one person go, it just festers. And we know how that happened with the ANC particularly.
What do you think should be done to give all South Africans a sense that they belong here, that they are South African?
One of the things we talk about in our manifesto is this idea, this project which was abandoned, of nation building. One, we have to recognize that we are different people. We are a diverse group of people in South Africa. And we need to embrace that diversity. and embrace our own individual and separate identities. But as part of that, we need to work on developing a South African identity. What it means to be South African for me and for you and someone else, a white person, a colored person, a poor person, a rich person, we would all say different things. We don't have that one South African identity. We might have our own individual identities, but we need a South African identity.
Okay.
Part of that means that issues such as corruption we need to deal with, because it speaks to who we are as a country. Because it starts with asking for a cold drink and giving a cold drink when you are being stopped by a traffic officer. It's a norm now. People joke about it, but it starts there. We need to deal with that.
So people must get a sense that right from the top, corruption does not pay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That is wrong.
Okay.
We need to make sure that in our education system, we talk about, at a very basic level, basic education, we talk about what it means to be South African. We make sure that young people understand the Bill of Rights as a start.
Yeah.
It must be taught in school.
I see our time is going. I think people, hopefully, I think we're going to go on about another, are you good for another 15 minutes?
15 minutes should be fine.
Another 15 minutes. Let me just ask you one question linked to, there's a few around national issues. You know, there's this thing that South Africa's got. We've got a bloated cabinet. They have all of these perks, the blue lights and personal credit cards. They have all of this stuff. What's Mzanzi's approach to all of those things? Cut them, reduce them, or continue with them? Especially if you guys could potentially get some of these things.
So, you know, when I talked about choices,
that
there are political choices that are being made deliberately. We could possibly fund a job seekers grant by scraping those blue lights brigades. Millions, if not billions of rands go to protecting politicians from us, the people who put them in power. And many of them are using that now to campaign. The president still uses his vehicles that we pay for, because he's still president, to go and campaign for the ANC. And that's money that could be used for something else. There was now the recent report, even at a very local level, in Johannesburg.
Oh, yes, with the mayor and the Maiko and all of those things.
The mayor having 8 to 10 cars, all with bodyguards. That's wasteful expenditure.
So you guys would cut those things?
We would cut those things. And we do say that particularly for a president, a deputy president, and a head of states from other countries, there must be a provision for police escorts. Only for those people. But cut the number of bodyguards, cut the number of vehicles that politicians have, that ministers have. Ministers get paid millions of rands. They must buy their own cars and they must drive their own cars.
What's your people's view on all these deputy ministers that we have?
We see, that's where a lot of money in South Africa is being wasted.
So you say get rid of them? Deputy ministers?
Many of us don't even know who those deputy ministers are. We don't even know what they do.
Okay.
We need to cut this bloated cabinet and save money and spend that money on the needs of South Africans.
Okay, before we go now to some of the stuff, Western Cape related stuff, what's your position on the land question? Let me
the
put
land
it that.
question. The land question has gotten us into some trouble, I would say, with the DA recently. I think also, I would say, I mean, it's politics, I guess. People say that it's politics. but also childish politics, particularly from John Steenhuisen, who called us mercenaries, who was asking...
Wait, forget about him now. You're taking your time to talk about him.
But
Tell us, what's your view on land?
It's linked to the land question.
Yes.
Because we spoke about supporting land expropriation.
Without compensation?
That's up to the constitution and that's up to the courts.
Okay.
We support lawful expropriation. And our courts and our legislation talks about a just and fair compensation. If the courts decide that it's just and fair to not compensate, then we'll go with that. But if the court decide that it's just and fair to compensate, then we'll go with that.
Okay.
Ours is that it's there in the constitution. It should have been used
long ago.
Long time ago.
The EFF and others didn't need to go do all this just gymnastics that they're doing.
It's just populist politics.
Listen, in this Western Cape, people say Cape Town, what's it? Two cities in one city or whatever. How can the divide between rich and poor and black and white be narrowed in the Western Cape? What if you premier? What would you do?
Yeah. So tomorrow, launching the Western Cape Plan at 10 in Khayelitsha. We call it the Bridge Plan because of exactly these things that you are talking about. We need to bridge the divides in this province, and in many ways, one, as you've said, race. We need to bridge those divides. It goes back to the conversations around nation building and understanding who we are, having those tough conversations. 2, around race and class. At the basis of that is also issues of access to land and making sure that people are able to live next to each other. Rich and poor are able to live next to each other, and you need to give access to land. We also need to bridge the divide between those of us who live in urban areas and urban cities and those who live in rural cities, who experience some of the most extreme poverty and neglect from our government. In order also to do these things, to fix some of these things, we need to bridge the divides between the 3 different levels of government. The Western Cape government, the City of Cape Town, and national government. If we are to bridge divides, we need these 3 governments to work with each other instead of continually blaming each other. Because when we talk about land, the Western Cape blames national government blames the Western Cape and the City of Cape Town.
So following up on that, what's your sense about the Western Cape government and the city wanting more powers from national government? Who's clamoring that they feel they want more powers?
Yeah. So it's the DA realizing that they'll never govern the country. And so they want to create a country on their own.
Okay.
It is a cop-out to say, because we are never going to govern the country, we are never going to be able to govern the police, then give us the police. Because we are never going to govern the country, we are never going to govern minerals and energy, then give us minerals and energy. The only part where we do agree in terms of devolution is public transport. It's the trains, so that we can have an integrated public transport system. The DA has spent billions on law enforcement, on starting their own police force. Look at where the province is in terms of crime. That law enforcement has done very little over this number of years. We have, out of the 30 police stations with the highest murder rate, 11 of those
is from here,
the City of Cape Town.
Okay, so you premier. What will you do to give young people a sense of hope, of belonging in this province? And let them believe that having an education is not a waste. So what would you do to let young people understand it's important to get an education? And there's hope for you here in the Western Cape, under Mzanzi.
Yeah. So create opportunities for them. And as I've said, in terms of these new industries, make sure that...
What kind of new industries are you thinking of?
One, the tourism, it's not a new industry, but it will be new industry, a new industry to many people who have been excluded outside of it. The second is the creative industry, the creative sector. We have many young, talented people who do not get opportunities to be creatives. We need to create that particular industry. Manufacturing and the textile industry in the province. We need to make sure that industry is developed and inclusive. Because when we talk about this industry, we must always make sure that they are inclusive, that they are not industry that benefit certain people. One of the things that we need to do is to go back and make sure that our colleges are functional. Many young people fall through the cracks, and they can be taken through college to get skills, because the one type of education that people see as important is going to a university more than it is to go to a college. We need to strengthen our college, the teaching in our colleges, the resourcing of our colleges, so that those who drop out of school can get skills there.
Okay. If no one gets a majority in the Western Cape, I've got a sense that the DA is going to get below 50%. I think a few other people agree with me.
They will.
Who will you work with, and who won't you work with in order to govern this province?
So we've said from the outset that now, before the election, we'll listen to anyone who wants to talk to us. We will not get into any coalition agreements before the election.
Okay.
And we've chosen not to be part of the multi-party charter because of also certain conditions that are set by donors that we've rejected. Us going into governance or possible coalition requires us to go into them for co-governance and for accountability purposes, not partnerships.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the multi-party charter, is that these are people that are in partnership. We cannot trust these people that they'll be able to hold each other to account because they started this now for power. And once they get that power, anyone who does wrong in that particular setup, it will be difficult for them to hold each other to account because they hold that power. So we have said us getting into governance doesn't mean that we have to be part of a governing coalition. We can be in governance through the legislature.
Yeah.
It will depend on how many votes we get. It will depend on the conversations that we will then have post-elections.
Okay. Can I ask you, I call it the Western Cape question. What are your views about that? How to deal with that? Where you have people who are regarded as, even in the New South Africa, as coloureds. They're the majority in the Western Cape, but they are the minority in South Africa. You're the premier candidate for the Western Cape.
Yeah.
How would you deal with that Western Cape question?
One of the things that we haven't done, particularly on this issue, is to have conversations about this particular issue. We shy away from it because it's a difficult and complex conversation. There are spaces where I've been where I say colored people, and then someone says, but no, it's not colored people. But other people prefer to be called colored people. So we should not dictate to people how they should be referred to. It's important for people who have done the work and studied and reflected to reflect on that. But the first thing, and it goes back to nation building, is that we need to create spaces where we can have conversations to talk about what it means in this day and age to be a colored person, what it means to be a black African person, what it means to be an Indian person and a white person. Once we are able to have those conversations, then we can talk about how are these different people all South Africans in the same way. It also means that we need to treat each and every one, and this is why we're calling our plan the bridge plan, that if we talk about safety, it must be the safety of the colored person as much as it is the safety of the black African person and the Indian and the white person. That's the only way we are going to be able to bridge divides, because inequality is unsustainable, and it affects particularly in this province, because the majority is colored people, affects colored people, secondary black African people who are the second majority. But these two groups of population combined, they make up over 80% of the population. But in terms of economic means, that's not reflected.
Okay. Let me give you this question. You become Premier of the Western Cape. They talk about 100 days. I give you 150 days.
Okay.
What are the 3 things that you would do within that 150 days? What are the 3 priority things?
The first is a moratorium on the sale of public land. Stop any plans to sell public land to private developers until we do a public land audit of all the pieces of land that are available. We audit their feasibility in terms of business, in terms of houses.
No, that's fine.
That's the one. The second, develop a plan for people living in informal settlements. The city and this province doesn't have a plan for those people, so that these people know when they are going to get services, which pieces of land that they are on, whether it's private or public. The third is to make sure that the rural provinces, rural municipalities, of this province are prioritized in terms of some of the things and issues that they have been neglected on, particularly education. Many mothers and many parents have to choose in those provinces to say, I want to put food on the table or education. So prioritize education and access to public transport for education purposes in all those municipalities, including the city of Cape Town.
Okay, my second last question. I know your leader is an editor, and lots of you guys come from the NGO sector, and some come from academia and so on. So there's not a lot of rich people in that party.
No.
Hopefully not. How are you guys? And I know elections are very expensive. I see you guys got
expensive,
wonderful posters of your leader, and he was one of the first out of the blocks. I've seen the posters over the months. Who funds you guys? How do you guys get the money? And how do you pay for this? Who pays for all of that?
We are funded by South Africans. South Africans who have different means. I contribute to funding Rise Mzanzi. People that can fund and donate from 50 rands to 100 rands. People that can donate up to 99,000 rands. And that's many donations that we don't have to declare as per the IEC. We then have people that can fund from 100,000 rands to about 1 million rands. And those are people that we have declared and that we're going to continue to declare. But also we have very wealthy South Africans who have been funding democracy in South Africa, have been funding other political parties that have funded us. And one of those is Rebecca Oppenheimer, who we've gotten into some trouble because we declared. And we still believe that it's important to be transparent. Because people now are going to make an informed vote when they vote for Rise Mzansi. And we call on all other political parties to do so. Because we know there are parties that filled stadiums but haven't declared. And they say they don't have money. And that's a lie. That's lying to voters.
So you guys are funded by some of these people live in Stellenbosch? It funds you?
Some of them. I don't know where Rebecca lives, but I hear.
Yeah, but she doesn't live there, I think. Does she live in Stellenbosch?
I have no idea where she lives.
But some of the other funders, they live there.
People funded by people that live across the country and province.
Okay. Then the final question. How much is a liter of milk?
A liter of milk?
Yes. How much does it cost?
A liter of milk, I normally buy the 6-pack of milk, which is about 60, 70 rands. So that's about 10 rand.
A liter of milk?
Yeah.
Okay. Next time, just go and do your research.
Depends also where you buy it.
You must take me to the place where you pay 10 rand a liter of milk.
I buy that 6-pack from Pick n Pay, so...
Now that 6-pack is no longer 60, 70 rands, now 89, 90 odd rand for a 6-pack. But listen, then the other thing is, lots of people that I talk to and so on, they say Rise Mzansi, give them a sense of Cope Light. You know when Cope was started?
Yeah.
Some of the people they in Rise Mzansi, and there's a sense that Rise Mzansi is a Cope kind of project.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
So Cope was a breakaway from the ANC. Rise Mzansi is not a breakaway from any political party.
So that's why they say Cope Light.
Yeah, that's one the differentiation there is that we have people that come from different backgrounds and not just from Cope, people that come from the DA, from the PAC background, from AZAPO. And so we've also been called the DA Light, and we've also been called ANC Light and EFF Light. That's because we welcome...
And civil society strong, civil society light.
NGO type of thing. And that speaks to our strength of being a diverse party that brings South Africans together to work for the South Africa that we deserve. For us to be able to attract members of the EFF, of the DA, of the ANC, it shows that people see something that they relate to in Rise Mzansi. And that's the strength of our national leadership collective, which we are led by, compared to parties that are about individual egos of political leaders.
Yeah. Axolile, thanks.
Axolile. Yes.
Thanks. I hope that to the viewers, I hope that you get a better sense of this young man. He's a handsome young man. He is very enthusiastic. I hope you should you get into Parliament, don't fall asleep like the others. Don't try and keep on into that job forever.
Yeah.
There's life outside of politics. Thanks for coming. You were the first person that we spoke to.
Thank you.
We're wanting to talk to smaller parties, the ones that the DA calls mercenaries and popcorn parties.
Yeah.
We want to talk to you guys because I think that South Africans need to know. South Africans are looking for an alternative. And we want to hear, what your offerings are, etc. So thanks for that. I hope to the viewers, I see someone says, thanks for the opportunity to get to know Rise Mzanzi. Someone is giving their love to you. Someone is saying hello. So he appreciates it. So people, normally we talk heavy stuff and so on, Axolile, but we also want to end with our feel-good moment. The feel-good moment for this week was going to be something, but then on Sunday, I happened to, it was a final sermon of someone who you should know, and the listeners know, Dean Michael Weeder of St. George's Cathedral. So, and I'm so glad I went to it. And that was really it just hit everything that I wanted to talk about off the table. And the feel-good moment is a final farewell for Dean Michael Weeder. And I wrote a little tribute and it's accompanied by some of the photos that I took there yesterday. And I normally write a tribute to someone when they die, especially when I knew them, and I really liked that person. But yesterday I debunked that and I wrote a tribute because Father Michael Weeder is still very, very much alive. It's in our midst. And I have loads and loads and loads and loads and lots of time for him. So I made a point to go and attend that farewell. He's a true son of the soil. He was colloquially known as a Dean of Camisa. And this is some of the stuff that I wrote yesterday. And I said, what an occasion. And thanks again, Michael, for that ability to, in your unique way, bring us all together. Because he's got that ability to bring us all together. You certainly continued with that tradition of opening the People's Cathedral. In fact, you opened the doors even wider to many of us. So I'd like to give some examples that I can personally attest to where he opened the doors wide to us. Our country was troubled at the goings on in our state, the state capture years. Many of us spoke out about it. And I initiated the formation of a civil society grouping, which you might know, the SA's First Forum, where we spoke truth to power and we worked with many organizations, including you guys. And Michael allowed us, and probably against lots of pressure from within the church or maybe outside the church as well, to come and picket on the steps of St. George's Cathedral and to make our displeasure and our discomfort heard. And we also started a few marches from there. And when many civil society groupings, we ratchet up our disobedience and our displeasure against those looting the state, he allowed us to put up our tents outside the cathedral and sleep there for a few days. I don't know if you can remember that period. He provided the St. George's Cathedral as a venue where many of us in civil society groupings could year after year come and deliver our people's State of the Nation or our people's budget addresses.
Yeah.
He made St. George's Cathedral available as a space where ordinary South Africans could also come and show our support for the people of Palestine. And here I can think of the interfaith gatherings that he arranged, the silent pickets, and a photographic exhibition by a dear friend of ours, Jimmy Matthews, who visited Palestine. He also played a central role when we marched from St. George's Cathedral to the South African Parliament during the hands of Colonel Jeremy Veery campaign, and his guidance and involvement was profound. You know, I tried to find words to do justice to describe him. And during the gathering yesterday, and when people paid homages to him, there were 2 points that came to the fore. The one was, you are the desert father. The second was, whatever you did to the least, you did unto me. And I think those 2 describe Michael Weeder. And on the day, there were a number of poignant moments. But for me, there were 2. There were 4. The one was an award bestowed by Archbishop Thabo Makgoba on behalf of the church on Michael Weeder and on his amazing wife and comrade, Dr. Benita Bennett. She got the Peace and Justice Award, and he got the Canon for Life Award. Then the second poignant moment was the unveiling of the Emeritus Archbishop Desmond Tutu stained glass at the entrance of St. George's Cathedral. The third poignant moment for me was when Michael had to take off his dean's garb and leave it on the altar in the church. And then the fourth thing was, I think, unscripted but deep felt reminiscings and thank yous that were given to Michael by ordinary congregants outside in the church, in the courtyard at the after church snacks. So dearest Canon Michael Weeder, thank you, shukran, dankie, enkosi, tramakasi, salute, Reverend Canon Michael Ian Weeder. You are really a true son of the soil of Kamisa.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we will end Rod's Views for the evening. Thanks to all of those who tuned in, and to our guest. We wish you all the best during your campaign.
Thank you very much.
And I hope that you'll be in the benches of Parliament. Thank you.
I will. Thank you for having me. And
all the best.
Thank you to everyone
Thank you.
who's listened.
Salute.
Don't worry about a thing. Every little thing gonna be alright. Singing, don't worry about a thing. Every little thing gonna be alright. Rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun.